Hello and welcome to today's Manchester United news and transfer updates that will keep you right up to date with everything. Coming up, United want Cunha and two more forwards, a big move for Tonali, Greenwood return talks, Bellingham and Casemiro updates, and a shock name on Ruben Amorim's untouchable list. Before we get into it though, smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Let's jump straight into it. So let's kick off with all the transfer noise. So we know the main area of concern for United, the one that we're main prioritising this summer transfer window, is the attack. We've been heavily linked with a few names on the list already, but Sky Sports have come up with an interesting update saying that Manchester United are understood to want the likes of Liam Delap, Matheus Cunha and one of either Antoine Semenyo or Bryan and Mbeumo for their forward line, and they will become an increasingly attractive destination if they can offer Champions League football next season. Semenyo is believed to be ahead of Mbeumo on the list of targets at United, but Liverpool and Newcastle are also keen on both, as are Spurs, who would also be a much more attractive draw with Champions League football if they can beat United in the Europa League final. So holy SHIT. According to Sky, United could be looking at not just Liam Delap and Matheus Cunha. Obviously, they're the two names. Liam Delap is always believed to be the number one striker target. Matheus Cunha, we know we're in conversations with, and we're just trying to agree personal terms. By all accounts, he wants to join United as well and is prioritising United. There's an update on that in a second I'm going to bring you. But then also one of either Semenyo or Bryan and Mbeumo, which would be insane for United to go and get three Premier League proven attackers this summer transfer window. That would be absolute nuts. And I suppose the question is, who are you picking, Mbeumo or Semenyo? Hit me up in the comments. Let me know who you'd be going for out of those two. That would be insane, though, for United to go out. Whether that's viable or doable, who knows? But Semenyo, interestingly, David Ornstein has linked us a few times with Semenyo, and he did say the other day that actually Semenyo is one of the names that Ruben Amorim really, really likes. And then obviously recently there's been a lot of noise regarding Bryan and Mbeumo as well. Yeah, really interesting kind of options. That would be insane to go and get three Premier League proven kind of forwards. Obviously, the Delap news is we don't know if he wants to come to United yet, because apparently he's waiting to see which club finishes in which kind of competition, i.e. Champions League or Europa League kind of spots as well. That's why we're getting links with the likes of Gyökeres and all these kind of other strikers as kind of alternatives as well. But that would be nuts. And I'd be here for that. Like, I'd definitely be here for that, going for, Cunha, Delap, and either Mbeumo or Semenyo. And I was thinking actually as well before recording this video, right, obviously the talk is, or a lot of the kind of noise around is, in order to do that, we would need to sell Garnacho or sell somebody, to make the squad space. But actually, when you think about it, right, we're already three forwards down because Sancho's gone, Rashford's gone, and Antony's gone. So we actually need two forwards anyway, just to replace Antony and Rashford. But there's an argument to say three, but I think we were a forward heavy when we had all those kind of players in the squad anyway under Erik ten Hag. I think we were 1-2 heavy in that kind of position with Garnacho's emergence coming through. So maybe they're looking at Matheus Cunha and either Semenyo or Mbeumo as an Antony and a Rashford replacement, because if you can sell Rashford, let's not forget, it's going to be homegrown profit, so that helps us with PSR rules. There's an update on him in a second that I'm going to run through as well. And then Antony's doing really well in better, so you might actually be able to flip a profit on Antony because of his performances as well. And then that gives you the money to go and get maybe a Semenyo or an Mbeumo. So actually, it's not beyond the realms of impossible, that, I don't think, because it's believed United have the money anyway to get Cunha and Delap. So if we just maintain what we're doing, we've got the money for Cunha and Delap. That's why we're kind of pushing for those deals early, because we know we've got the budget in order to do that. And then if you sell Rashford and Antony, then that money could be used to then, go towards Semenyo and Mbeumo, because we don't know how much they're going to cost. Was the last talk about Semenyo not saying that they wanted like 70 million and Mbeumo's price is believed to be 60 million, but he's only got a year left on his contract, so I'm sure that could be negotiated down. But, would be interesting options. I'd be here for that, to bring to bring Cunha and one of Semenyo or Mbeumo in for the kind of inside 10 positions. But let's go through their stats. So Semenyo, 39 appearances, 11 goals, 7 assists this season. Having a really good season for Bournemouth. Would be a player I think that would provide a little bit more versatility, because can play on the right and on the left. could possibly play at wing-back in the wing-back positions as well. Mbeumo, 39 appearances, 18 goals and 8 assists, would be maybe more of the left 10 position, possibly could play at left wing-back, but or maybe as a striker. He's played there a couple of times as well, but I think offers a little bit less versatility than Semenyo, but you know, it's a case of take your pick. Who you kind of picking? Would you go for Semenyo? Would you go for Mbeumo? Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you think about that. Let me know who your preference would be, and let me know what you kind of think of the story as well. It'll be really interesting to read what you've got to say regarding the situations later. Now, the other player mentioned in there is Cunha. So the Matheus were saying that Matheus Cunha is prioritising Manchester United. He's already told the club he wants to join, which is good, because obviously there were reports yesterday regarding Arsenal in talks with his agent, potentially Newcastle in talks as well. But according to the Matheus, Cunha is prioritising Manchester United, which is good, because, you know, I'd be freaking pissed off if we don't get Cunha now, with all the kind of reports, all the big hitters, the Romano, here we go is close, and here we go soon, and David Ornstein and all these kind of people confirming that actually, yeah, it's looking very, very likely, that deal. So that would absolutely aggravate me if we didn't get it over the line now, because I've kind of, you know, come to terms with us signing Cunha. But according to the Matheus, he wants to join as well. So that's kind of a little bit reassuring regarding that. On transfers itself, though, Ruben Amorim had the following to say in his pre-match press conference ahead of the match tomorrow, when asked specifically, because he was saying in the press conference that he doesn't have the characteristics that he wants within the squad. And then when kind of pressed on that questions, he said the following: when I talk about characteristics that the team lacks, it's the players who play more inside than outside, those little things, even the foot. It's very important to have a left foot in the position Garnacho played today, and the right and as the right wing 10, and that can change the way that we play. Hello, Bryan and Mbeumo, left-footed, can play in that inside 10, although, you know, where's Amad Diallo in this entire conversation? And then he said, having wingers who are more attacking than defensive can change the way we play. Those are the kind of things we'll try to do in the future, but it's going to take time. It won't happen in one summer. So I was talking about that and the weaknesses. You can see the match. We have so many problems, even to win this kind of match. You can see during the match that we have a lot of things to improve, and I agree with Amron on that. There are so many holes in the team as well. Whether we're going to get all of it done in one transfer window is very, very unlikely, for those thinking that we're going to solve all of our problems in one summer. But even if you can just do one step at a time, you know, the attack, and then if you've got the likes of, let's say you got, I don't know, Delap, Cunha and Semenyo, for example, or Mbeumo, whichever your kind of preferences out of those two, potentially you could then drop Bruno a little bit deeper in the midfield position, because I actually like him playing a little bit deeper. And then does that kind of at least paper over the midfield crack for next season, so that next summer, when obviously the window opens again, we prioritise the midfield and so on and so forth. Who knows? So many issues in the squad that it is going to take time to actually kind of build it out. But I like the kind of idea that they're starting from the front almost to the back, where they want to improve the attack first. But interesting that Ruben Amorim said that we lack characteristics, and then specifically mentioned that kind of inside 10 position where he ideally wants a left footer, i.e. Amad Diallo, to play in that kind of left 10. But obviously Diallo's been injured for the last few months as well. So that's really interesting. Gives us a little bit of insight of what his preferences would be within the team and the squad. And I think you can see it from the games and stuff as well. But give us your thoughts on that in the comments. Now let's go through the untouchable list. So Ruben Amorim considers 3 Manchester United stars untouchable, with a surprise name on that list, prompting a change in the club's approach to summer signings. He wants to build his team around 3 key players: Bruno Fernandes, Kobe Mainoo, and Diego Dallo. What do you think about that? That came from Rudy Coletti, who was, you know, decent, can be a little bit hit and miss as well, but this was a report did in like Team Talk are a rumour and a gossip kind of outlet, but Rudy Coletti is one of their more credible kind of journalists, but is still a little bit hit and miss. So I would say, you know, I'd want to see way more credibility regarding this one, but that's really interesting. Like the first thing I thought when I read this was, Amad Diallo, anybody? Like, surely he needs to be top of the unsellable list. Bruno Fernandes, Kobe Mainoo, and Diego Dallo. So again, is that where we're talking about the transfer priorities? If the report is to be believed, You know, is Diego Dallo seen as the right wing back? So we're not going to necessarily go for that. So then that money that we maybe allocated for Kenda, for example, is now going to be put into the attack. That's probably likely what's kind of happening. And then we've got young players coming through in that area as well. Mantato's just been given his new kind of deal. He's believed to be somebody that can play in that right wing back position. Obviously, could rotate Amad Diallo there as well. So we do kind of have options on that side. And then on the opposite side, Dorgu. Obviously, Harry Ames is coming through. Talk of him getting a new contract. We've got Diego Leon coming back or coming in the summer as well. Dorgu did all right, I thought, at right wing back as well. So there are actually options in the kind of wing back position, which is maybe why they're now allocating their budget to go for another forward, because we are going to be effectively 3 forwards, like if you include Sancho in that, Sancho, Rashford, and Antony. So it does make sense for us to be going for 2 forwards and then a striker we would need anyway. So really interesting to kind of see, but. And going back to the kind of surprise, I'm surprised Diego Dallo is on that list because he's been terrible this season, although better since moving to right wing back, like left. He should never play on the left again. It was absolutely horrific the start of his season before Amorim came in. And even when Amorim came in, Amorim was having to play him at left wing back. Well, since we signed Dorgu, basically, Diego Dallo's been doing a little bit better. Still a little bit shaky. I'm not entirely convinced by Dallo being completely true for you. But the one thing about Dallo is that you'll read and research and kind of listen about him. He is the ultimate professional behind the scenes, and that does count for something as well. He's seen as a model professional, always in training, looking after himself. Up until now, he's never been hardly injured as well. Always available, always plays. I think he's always almost been overplayed, which maybe has an impact on his form and performances sometimes. But he is really, really highly regarded for everything that he does behind the scenes at United as well, which might be, you know, what Ruben Amorim rates and likes as well. But give us your thoughts on the untouchable 3 untouchables: Fernandes, Menu, and Dallo. They wouldn't be my 3 untouchables, I've got to be honest. Bruno Kobe, I would, but Amad Diallo would have to be the other one instead of Diego Dallo. But yeah, give us your thoughts on that story in the comments below. So let's move on to the next story. So Garnacho is still very much on Chelsea's radar. They are looking for someone to operate from the left side, and they know that Garnacho is keen on the move and is a huge talent and think he would be a good fit. Now, that came from Graham Bailey. Graham Bailey is a hit-and-miss journalist, you know, suggesting that Chelsea see Garnacho as a good fit for their system. I would agree. I think he's... you know, I think he would do well on that kind of left wing position. We've already kind of seen that. I don't necessarily think he suits being an inside 10 because I don't know if he's got the attributes needed for that particular role, as we can see from some of his performances this season, although he has been doing much better recently. It's just his decision-making, Garnacho's decision-making needs to improve. But yeah, still links there with Chelsea. We know they're interested in Garnacho. Now, this came out from Fabrizio Romano. So Barcelona believe Marcus Rashford is an option this summer, and they really value how he can play as a 9 or a winger, etc. He's among the options. So I've been saying, you know, that the links were there from January that apparently Rashford's preferred destination would be Barcelona. Barcelona were going to go for him in January, if you remember rightly, but they couldn't sell. Was it Fati they were trying to sell? Couldn't get him done. Needed the money to register for Dani Olmo, and they couldn't get that kind of space in the squad to go for Rashford on loan. Otherwise, he would have been on loan. If they could have sold Fati, then Rashford would be at Barcelona already on potentially loan with maybe an option or an obligation to buy in the summer as well. So I do think there's interest from both sides, Rashford and Barcelona. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on, and I think that will be good for us because the more competition we get for Rashford, the better. But then also Barcelona would be able to pay him you know, a higher wage, which means that if we won't need to necessarily pay him out as much, because if he goes to Villa, we're going to have to pay a big chunk of that price and fee to pay him out of his contract effectively. But if Barcelona pay him more wages, we won't necessarily have to subsidise him the loss of earnings that he's going to take for moving on or coming out of his contract early as well. So that's an interesting one to pay attention to and keep an eye on. I do think the links are there with Barcelona. It's just whether, you know, well, I say whether they're going to afford it. They'll work it out. They'll do something. They'll sell, you know, they'll sell a body part of some of their players or something. They'll put their kidneys on for auction to try and get the money to do it. They'll do something anyway to get the money, I'm sure. And then those close to Mason Greenwood expect increased interest from Premier League clubs this summer. Greenwood likes the idea of returning to England. Sources in France are confident that at least 2 Premier League clubs may consider making a move for him. Now, that came from the Telegraph, you know, suggesting that maybe Greenwood is planning to leave France this summer, and there's potential interest from Premier League clubs, i.e. 2 Premier League clubs, and that he would consider a return. There was a report the other day, actually, in The Sun, suggesting that Greenwood feels that now would be an okay time to come back to the Premier League, because he feels that everything that's kind of happened, the dust is settled around, and he's not talked about as much. He's not in the media as much because of obviously what happened when he got suspended and banned and all of that kind of stuff. So I suppose the question on that, like, firstly, who do we think the Premier League clubs are, and would you take Greenwood back? I think he's a talented player. No questions around his footballing ability and everything like that as well. I just think, even though the dust has maybe settled on what kind of happened, I think if he came back to United, it would just reopen it again. And I think that bridge has been burnt, unfortunately, by that particular event, and I can't see United going back on that personally. But give us your thoughts on that in the comments below. Greenwood potentially coming back. But then the other thing around that story is, if he does get sold, we do have a 50% sell on clause on there as well. So any profit that is made from Greenwood being sold, we get 50% of that profit as well. So again, it could potentially be another boost to our transfer budget in the summer if he does end up moving as well. But yeah, give us your thoughts on the Greenwood kind of news in the comments below. It'll be interesting to hear your opinion on that. Now let's go through some other news. So Manchester United are ready to make a move for Newcastle midfielder Sandro Tonali this summer, according to Italian outlet Corriere dello Sport. They explain that Ruben Amorim's side is set to compete with Juventus for the former AC Milan man, with Red said to be a big contender for his signature. It's added that United have an ambitious plan for the summer based on them winning the Europa League at the end of the month, and are prepared to offer £84.5 million to convince Newcastle to sell Tonali. Now, I read that in the Manchester Evening News, but obviously the report is coming from Corriere dello Sport, who actually are a fairly decent Italian outlet. But what on earth are we thinking about that? Tonali, I mean, he's a good player and Premier League proven as well. Where we'll find £84.5 million from when we've just talked about the strengthening of the attack. Who knows? With Newcastle, sell him to us as well. I suppose Newcastle, even though they're the richest club in the world, they're in a position where they have to sell to buy as well, which is PSR rules. That's the way the rules are. Every club needs to sell to buy. Even the richest ones in the world still need to do it. It's not just a Man United thing. Where we'd find that sort of money, who knows? But Tonali, great player. I think I would take him at United, actually. I think he would fit what we were kind of looking for. Good on the ball, tenacious. I really like Tonali as well, but massive red flags, obviously, over the betting scandals and the bans and that he's had. So that would be a huge red flag for me personally as well. And I don't think that's the sort of player we should be going near, because it's a risk. Look at what happened with Newcastle. They got their fingers burnt. They didn't know anything about it. And then out of nowhere, lengthy ban, comes back, been kind of caught again almost, but got like a suspended ban, didn't he, I think, as well? That would be a massive red flag for me. But the profile of player I like, really like Tonali, and obviously Premier League proven as well. So yeah, it would be I think he'd be a good addition to the midfield actually as well, thinking about it now. But massive red flag around the whole kind of gambling thing for me personally. But that's my opinion. I'm sure you're going to share yours on that in the comments below. Now, Jobe Bellingham is on Manchester United's list of targets for the summer. That came from TalkSport, who I would say take with a pinch of salt. But Jobe Bellingham is a name that is on the kind of list of players that have been linked with us by credible outlets in the past as well. So that's potentially an interesting one. Sky, though, however, was saying Borussia Dortmund have made Jobe Bellingham a top summer transfer target and believe they can strike a £25 million deal for the Sunderland midfielder. That came from the Times, but I read it in Sky Sports. So that's interesting. Again, following the footsteps of his brother, maybe being linked with Manchester United, ended up going to Dortmund. Whether he would want to follow in his brother's footstep and kind of do that as well, who knows? But he is definitely a player of interest, I think, Jobe Bellingham from us. Whether we're going to go for it or not, who knows? We'll need to kind of wait and see that one, how that kind of plays out. But I do think he is a player of interest. It's just whether we will follow through on that interest or not remains to be seen. But I'll keep my eye on it for you. But yeah, he's on the watch list for us, I would say. Now, Now let's go through the Casemiro news. So Casemiro staying at Manchester United is now a serious option. Ruben Amorim now thinks the midfielder has a big role to play in the rebuilding of the club and believes his experience and versatility could be a key asset to bring back success. So that came from the Sun, who again we do need to take with a pinch of salt, suggesting though that Casemiro is now staying at, Casemiro staying at United is now a serious option. That Ruben Amorim, now thinks he's got a big role to play during the rebuild. I actually think there might be merit in that, because Ruben Amorim said in his press conference recently that his attitude and work rate and the fact that he came back from, effectively being nowhere, not even making appearances, just being an unused sub in certain games, to now probably being, one of our more effective midfielders, and that Amorim's had to work with him to change his kind of role and change the team slightly to get the best out of Casemiro. There was a report the other day, stop freaking diving in up the pitch and, tweaking little things regarding him as well. And I do think there is a bit of value for keeping some experienced players around, because everyone's moaning about getting all these young players because we want experience. Well, you don't get a more experienced player at the moment that's still playing than Casemiro with the amount of trophies and stuff that he's won. So would it be the worst idea to keep him for one more year because his contract runs out after that as well? It's just, are we paying 300 odd grand a week just for somebody to be experienced? Because the problem with Casemiro before was his performances were garbage, and then you're paying 300 grand a week for somebody that wasn't performing very well on the pitch and wasn't even getting on the pitch at that stage as well. But now, obviously, he's turned his kind of form around, and credit to him for that as well, and credit to Amorim for getting the best out of him as well, and kind of adapting and not being stubborn like we saw with the previous manager that would just play players, regardless of form or anything. He's actually obviously been working on things and tweaking things behind the scenes as well. And the problem is Casemiro apparently wants to stay. I can see him staying now, I genuinely can see Casemiro staying because he's on a large wage. He's got 11 year left on his contract. So from Casemiro's perspective, if he walks away for free next summer, he's going to get a big payout anyway. And I don't think it's necessarily about the money for him neither as well, because he's on an absolute fortune at United. But it makes more sense for Casemiro to not move now, because he can wait a year and get signing on bonuses, get higher wages from other teams as well, because effectively there is no transfer fee for him. So I can see Casemiro kind of staying as well. And to be fair, as long as we get to this version of Casemiro, not the worst idea as well, because like I said, you don't get more experienced player than Casemiro. So, if you then keep Casemiro, does bringing in someone like Jobe Bellingham to learn off of for a year, not the worst idea as well neither. Or we've got someone like Sandro Tonali to come through in the first team next season to be playing alongside or playing next to Casemiro would be a great experience for them as well. So I can see some kind of benefit in that as well, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens in the summer. But give us your thoughts on that in the comments. And then the final story I've got for you is regarding Juan Hernandez. So Manchester United and Chelsea are both considering whether to trigger the £5 million release clause for Barcelona youngster Juan Hernandez Torres this summer. Again, it came from Sky Sports, suggesting that United and Chelsea are both looking to trigger the release clause of Juan Hernandez, not a player I know anything about. 17-year-old attacking midfielder, so he would fit the kind of Christopher Vivell model of going for these young, up-and-coming, unknown kind of hidden gems from around the world as well. We know we're looking at ones that are out of contract or ones that are relatively cheap. £5 million would be cheap for a player who I'm sure has got quality. If Christopher Vivell and everyone's looking to bring these sort of players in, 'cause you don't pay the £5 million release clause for a youngster if they're not very good. So I'm going to assume that he's a talented player or one that's got potential in him as well. So again, that could be one to kind of keep an eye on, and would fit the mold of exactly what we're trying to do: strengthen the first team, but then also get these young players in and start a pipeline of players potentially coming into the first team, or if they don't, selling them for profit, because that's PSR rules, and that massively helps us going forward as well. So but yeah, keep an eye on it for you. Give us your thoughts on that in the comments below. Give us your thoughts on all the other topics discussed in today's video, because that's you all up to date with the latest Manchester United news and transfer news. Don't forget to smash a like on the video on your way out, subscribe to the channel if you are new. See you in the next one.